What are some of those product decisions that you have taken which have impacted masses?
In every age or era, there will be something which will be top of the curve in terms of innovation. One of the biggest invention of humanity was the wheel.
So how do you see it right now with the integration with AI?
So this is exactly how technology works.
What is Flipkart HealthPlus?
A very important triangle is doctor, diagnostics, and medicine. Any technology thrives when there is a digital twin calculator. It's such a great digital twin.
Whenever we look at a customer, right, especially from a B2C point of view, you need to understand what is the problem that you are trying to solve for them.
Every generation will have their own context, which shapes their thinking, their behavior, their aspirations, and so on.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Decode Stories, where we explore the past, discuss the present, and prepare for the future with leaders. In today's episode, we are delighted to have a leader in the domain of product management and technology innovation. As the Chief Technology and Product Officer at Flipkart HealthPlus, he has been pivotal in transforming the healthcare access and affordability in India. His work leverages the power of AI, analytics, machine learning, and robotics to empower the health and commerce sector. Let's dive into his interesting journey and let's welcome Pranav Saxena. So thank you so much, Pranav,
Thank you.
for joining us today. How are you feeling?
Very good.
And
Yes.
and it's a Saturday, so I think we find you got some time off your calendar.
Yes.
That's great. So Pranav, if we look at your entire journey, right? You started in product in 2000s when, I mean, I'm not sure how well defined the product was at that time, but over the last 2 decades, how have you experienced this entire journey of yours? So if you can tell us more about it.
Sure. I think way back, in 2000, I joined like Series A, Series B, Series C kind of startups, right? So, of course, these terminologies were not there, but I used to work for them. And the term product management was there, by the way.
Okay.
Step number one. But most of the product managers used to be very deep into technology, right? So, I mean, depends on the company. It was a reflection of chief engineer.
Okay.
Right? If you look at a big machinery kind of companies or industrial companies, chief engineer used to be head of product.
Okay.
Right? So that is how it kind of evolved. In my case, where I used to work, the product management used to do the consumer research, of course, but they used to go very deep into how the product and the technology, everything is being designed.
Okay.
Right, and they used to go and even implement it.
Okay.
Right, I was in a more of a B2B kind of product. It used to do a lot of optimization, right? So a lot of algorithmic products.
Okay.
So you have to go tweak it, write a lot of scripts, lot of algorithms on the fly, make it run, ensure that value is being delivered, not delivered, teach the end user that how to handle it, take it forward, and so on. So product management was there, but very very hands-on, very very deep. And you used to write I mean, I will say spec like a BTech project, right? It used to be 40, 50, 60 pages. And, a lot of people will review it. Right? So that used to be a very detailed product management. So I think that was, in this small kind of startup. In big companies at that point in time, there was a little hazy boundary between product management, business analyst, business folks, and so on. So there were companies like that, where they used to write the spec. Of course, those were the era where a lot of this custom development used to happen.
Okay.
Right, you build a solution for a particular problem. So there used to be a team which will go deeper into those problem statement, write a very specific solution for that.
So let's say, since you mentioned about the custom development, so are we looking at, let's say we have a solution, right?
Yeah.
But maybe, for each and every organization,
Yes.
that, whichever it is using that solution, So there will be customizations made accordingly.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Because that is how they used to differentiate or create a competitive advantage out of it. So so there were product managers who will understand how the overall product works, and then how do you customize it.
Okay.
Right, for a particular organization. Let's assume whether it is a Nestle or Unilever or whatever, right? They would have innovated a process over a period of time, or something, right? You go and adopt your product to those processes or those recipes and so on.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. And because you have worked in various organizations, right? So if you can tell us a little more about that as well, in different organizations, the kind of different roles that you have played, and your journey, from a B2B to a B2C, how exactly it happened. So yeah.
Sure. I think there are 2-3 dimensions. One is that let's go through how different stages and companies they treat product management.
Yes.
The second is the time dimension.
Okay.
And the third one is this B2B to C kind of thing, right? I think the bigger the company is, the more structured the product management is. There is a process, right, to write the PRD, review, release the product, take it to the market, right, and iterate.
Okay.
Right. The younger companies may not have, such an, strong and elaborate process for that. Let me take one example. When I used to work for SAP, there used to be something called product standards.
Okay.
Uh, right, and even what we know today about diversity, equity, and inclusion, SAP had those standards at that point in time, that if you launch a particular product, any disabled person of XYZ should be able to use it in this manner, and product should be able to adopt it, and so on. Right, but when I used to work for, say, small startup, even on the B2B SaaS companies, I mean, yeah, first launch it for the regular user, and then we will see where the users are. Right, so I think that is one important difference across this spectrum. The second one is, I think, the depth. I believe that in every age or era, there will be something which will be top of the curve in terms of innovation. So in the initial days of 2000 and so on, right, this optimization algorithms, they were at the peak. Right before that, it was like all the enterprise process reengineering was at the peak, right, where SAPs of the world thrived. So the startups were doing very well in terms of innovating new algorithms, and so on, right? So that was another difference, that you have to be really smart in terms of your understanding of data, optimization, the outcome, interpretation of that, how you can implement it, where will it fail, right, and so on. Very simple example, that you can optimize the inventory, right. Uh, Say, for example, a large paint company or any FMCG company, right? It will drastically reduce the inventory in the system, but then it has implication on their balance sheet, because all of a sudden some assets are going down. Now, how will you explain that? Right? If something goes wrong, this inventory all across the supply chain will increase or decrease somewhere, right? Now, and this is like 15 years back, these algorithms used to take maybe 20 hours, 30 hours to generate the result, right? We didn't have that much of compute, right? And just to adopt this change used to take a lot of time, right? So that was the second challenge. The third challenge, which product manager used to be very smart about in these smaller companies, is that all the since the compute was not there, you have to be really smart about your technical know-how of how to tweak the algorithm, which is, in simple terms, the data structure, the way you will design the algorithm so that it can be faster, yet accurate, and so on. So that was one theme. Right, with time, I think, with the technology, right, a lot of things evolved. So a lot of optimization problems, could have been done in a much better way by using heuristics, machine learning, and so on.
Okay.
Then the compute also improved a lot. In general, the with the invention of the cloud and so on, a good infrastructure is available nowadays, right? Compared to earlier, it was all on-prem, so it was very difficult to run and expensive to run in those kind of environment. So I think that is how it has changed,
Okay.
uh, with respect to time.
Okay. And currently, if we talk about, because you have literally seen this entire, I would say, the journey, and along with that, the different kind of innovations that happened, the transformation that have happened, right? So, especially looking at AI right now, right? And you have a, let's say, a better infrastructure which is available. There are better computing techniques which are available. I think the entire tech ecosystem and the product ecosystem have also evolved, right? So how do you see it right now with the I would say with the integration with AI?
Sure. So let me first give a framework
Okay.
which I have realized, and my last 20 years can also fit into that framework.
Okay.
Right. So we believe that one of the biggest invention of humanity was the wheel.
Okay.
Right. But if you look at one single wheel, doesn't have too many use cases. Yeah, you can create a pottery wheel and so on. Right. I think the biggest invention was uh, you know the next two things which happened with it. Right. One is someone invented the axle which joined the two wheel, and then the use cases multiplied. Right. So that is, I think, the phase one. The second one is that someone would have created the cart, invented the road, right, and then you know till steam engine and the fossil fuel engine, everything happened around those wheels. Right. So this is exactly how the technology works.
Okay.
Right. The example I also gave was first the algorithms were invented, the compute was not there. Right. Then the infra of cloud came, the compute came, so kind of road is there, and so on. Now let me put that framework to the AI world.
Sure.
I think there are two, three things which are happening. One is that maybe the infra is there to a certain extent. I think for big chunk of companies, they are still not there in the data rich
Phase, right?
phase at this point in time where they can really leverage this.
Okay.
So for them, that road building or infra building is still
A journey for them.
a journey for them. So that is point number one. Point number two, I think any technology thrives when two important thing happens, or three. First one is that there is a digital twin. So the example being that one wheel has limited use case, but you have axle and then there is a pair. The pair can do a lot of things. Same thing has happened in our human life and the technology, right? You have digitized certain things, right? So there is a digital twin of certain things, right? And then very simple example I keep giving, that calculator, right? It's such a great digital twin, right? It enhances our calculating a lot of capabilities, right? You just use it and it does it for you, right? Flawlessly. So I think for AI, that digital twin needs to be created.
Okay.
Right. And now people are thinking about, there will be a parallel programmer or co-pilot, or there will be a parallel accounting guy, there will be parallel something else. So that journey of vertical digital twin will happen in next 5 to 6 years, whatever.
Okay.
So I think that is part number one. Part number two is, once that digital twin is there, the convergence has to happen. What does that convergence? The example I gave, that first you need a wheel, then axle, second wheel, the road, and then the vehicle on top of it. So all that will happen for the AI.
Okay.
Right. So we don't. I mean, infra is probably, and data is one part of the road, and then a lot of new form factors will come where people will start consuming this digital twin.
Okay.
Right. Today, most of our form factors are either mobile or laptop, and largely textual. Right. Video is largely in the in the entertainment kind of a world, not on the work or productivity enhancement world. So all that needs to change.
Okay.
Right. So these are two very important factors when the AI will come into the picture. And the third important piece is, I think, the change in human behavior, which will take a lot of time. So, so if human makes a mistake, probably we don't penalize too many things, right? If you show them 100 pictures and maybe they are able to, classify only 90 of them correctly, it's okay, right? You work with them together and say, hey, this is what is happening and so on. But if AI does that, you will say, hey, it's inaccurate. Machine is not reliable.
It's not
Right. So if we are doing something for our own, we are not ready for probabilistic outcome. See, AI is still in the probabilistic world.
Okay.
Right. And which I believe will create into two very specific segment. Whichever areas are very, process or step driven, they will have the first co-pilot. So like engineering coding is a very step driven. Engineering design is a little bit creative, little bit process driven. Right. Anything which is related to learning is not very step. The way you learn, the way I learn is very different.
Very different.
Right. Same thing about health and treatment. Right. It will take a lot of time to adopt AI in those areas, because there is a little bit of science, there is a little bit of art. So wherever there is a very well defined processes, I think AI will really assist. So these are the three important pieces: the digital twin, the convergence, and wherever there is a standard process.
Okay.
So these three will really help adopt people AI going forward. And I think that's an interesting problem space for product managers, right? That how do they go towards this journey?
Okay. And if like you have spent a lot of time in Flipkart, right? And you have been a part of multiple teams as well, whether it was supply chain, and in there also you have worked on the automation, on the robotic side of things as well, right? And currently you are associated with Flipkart HealthPlus. So I have a couple of questions for you. First is, because one thing that I have observed is not many people are aware of the Flipkart Health Plus, what exactly it is, right? Secondly, during this entire journey with Flipkart, what are some of the um, some of those product decisions that you have taken which have impacted masses? Yeah.
Sure. So I think, one important. So you said the three questions. One is the Flipkart supply chain part of the journey of various roles I have played. Then the health, and then the important decision which have
Yes.
impacted masses, right? So let me start with the supply chain part, and then the impact on the masses. Then I will come to the different roles and why I played that. Right, when we started Flipkart supply chain journey, so generally supply chain is known for efficiency, right, and the efficiency is driven by scale, bulk movement, and so on. But if you look at e-commerce supply chain, there's a consumer supply chain. Right, here unit moves, so it's a service supply chain. It is not like I am moving goods from location A to B and then B to C, right, for B2B purpose, right, or for retail purpose, and so on. This is like I am serving a consumer, right. So that is one very important piece. The second important piece, which we need to understand, at least in Flipkart or 10 years back or 15 years back journey, that in India, even the B2B supply chain was not very well established, which at pan-India level, right? There were players at, regional levels and so on. And we were planning to do this consumer-centric, service-centric supply chain across India. So that was the second, the infra was not available. Our understanding was also very weak, and so on. So that was, I think, second big challenge. Right, the impact was that building this service supply chain, which means that when consumer buys something and he sees something, right, on the buying page that I will deliver on next day, or I will get the stuff on next day. Right? I can return this product, or I can pay when someone is at the doorstep, or I can exchange the product, right? Or I can open and see the product, right? There are so many different services which we provide at the doorstep, right? Which impacts millions of people. All that was designed, right, behind the scene. Now, what were the critical decisions and the trade-off criteria, right? Number one is that it is a service-centric, right? It should finally impact the net promoter score of the consumer. He should be happy with this service, right? Second, with scale, they should reduce the cost, because the cost of serve, if it goes up, right, there is no sustainable business model. So that is the second part, right? The third very important how part is that it should gel with the way internet is working. So how does internet work? That in milliseconds you are browsing and seeing the stuff. So you should be able to compose that, hey, if someone is browsing in Darbhanga, or someone is browsing in, say, Srinagar or Kanyakumari, wherever, right? Based on wherever that source is, that material is, whether it is a Surat, whether it is Delhi, whether it is Coimbatore or something, you should be able to figure out what kind of service I can provide from this location to that location in near real time. Right? So that is the how behind all this. Right? The second important how which people do not realize that, say, internet is all about the way we understand internet as a step number one is connecting various documents or servers and so on, right? And then you see the stuff. When you take it to the supply chain and internet connection, it is you are connecting physical world to this internet, right? Which means this dynamism has to be there in the physical world. And the step one is that, which means that where exactly that product is, right? How is it moving? So that data generation, and then on top of that, making decisions around that to create a service out of it is a very, very important and complex problems, right? So that is what we solve to ensure that at internet scale, consumers are getting these kind of services. Now you can have various variants of this, right? So we used to do something called a spiky or flash sales, right? That for 1 hour particular product will be
available. Yes.
available, right? And it used to peak like anything, right? In that kind of peak, while there is the consumer side problem of how to handle these many requests and how to ensure that the website is up and running. On the physical side is that if people order, how will you orchestrate that peak, right? Because that has a massive capacity issue, right? All of a sudden, imagine that you have Kumbh Mela for 1 day or 1 hour, right? What will happen to the railway station? What will happen to the traffic on the road and so on, right? So all that, those will be the physical manifestation of that peak. Very similar stuff happens on, say, warehouse, in our sort center, in our last mile. How will you operate that, right? How will you build a technology-led orchestration and flexibility in your physical ecosystem? So all those are the problems which we solved, and some of them, I'm quite proud of that. Those innovations happen first in India compared to anywhere else in the world. Of course, because we were the first one to face those problems. Right? India is at that point in time, we didn't have address. Unlike Western countries where at least zip code, roads, house number, they are very well defined. Here, the house is like, behind Krishna temple, next to this bus stop, and so on. So all those problems we solved at scale. Yes. So these were the things.
And I think you would be facing a similar kind of, I would say, stress on the warehouse side of things, on the supply side of
Absolutely.
things during the BBD as well, because
Absolutely.
that's such a huge sale, and
Yes.
the scale just simply just shots up like anything, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Got it.
Yes.
Yes. Now coming to the next part is, what is Flipkart Health Plus?
Yes. So I think why health and what is Flipkart Health
Yes.
Plus? If you look at in India, 65% of the folks they pay out of the pocket for any health services.
Okay.
Right, that is number one. Number two is that the accessibility of a good enough quality services. Services can include availability of doctor, availability of authentic medicines, and the complete medicines. So if you have 5 medicines written on prescription, can you get all of them? And a good quality diagnostics. So if I take a particular disease, a very important triangle is doctor, diagnostics, and medicine. This whole triangle, first of all, it is not easily accessible, available, and affordable. Right, across India. Yeah. Right, and we thought that if not Flipkart, who else will solve this? And again, this is an infrastructure complex problem. Yeah. Right, and Flipkart is trying to solve that problem via Flipkart HealthPlus. So that's our mission, that how can we reach out to billions of folks in India, okay, where we can provide a good quality healthcare, a basic healthcare, right, across pin codes. Now, coming back to the same piece, that this is again a big infrastructure game, right? We have shortage of doctors. We have, I think, upward of 95% of labs which are not accredited, okay, right, by the agencies, right. The medicines are not available. We have spurious medicine available, right. So how do you across pan India provide this triangle? And this triangle is in sync, right? You go to doctor might write you to get the test done, and then you need the medicine in hours, right? So in 72 hours at least, or 48 hours, this cycle should be over. Yes. Right, in sequence, in some sequence, right? So how do you do that? So there is one part which is the sick care part of it. What? Or sick care. If someone is sick, then this is what happens, right? Okay. Then there is a prevention part. If you look at now, I think 130 million or so people are technically on the verge of being diabetic and so on in India, right? And I think we have a lot of lifestyle disease issues that, so how can you keep yourself well, right? That is another big challenge. So that is another phase we will be focusing on to provide these solutions. Okay. So this is what Flipkart, Health Plus is all about. Okay. Okay. I think we've also got to know the why as well. Yes, that is very important. We have some unique, interesting things. So we are experimenting with something called family doctor. Okay. So the idea there is that, if you are, I don't know about the big cities. I happen to grow up in small town. Okay. So you used to have one doctor uncle, right? For anything you go to him. Yes. And then he used to say, hey, this is specific case, go to the hospital or meet the specialist and so on. So here the idea is to create that doctor uncle, right? Okay. The family doctor. For whole family, for anything you first come to him, and most of the things he will be able to resolve. But if something is where you need a specialist, then you go to the specialist. Yes. So that's the idea of. Yeah. I think this is a concept that I think most of the people would be able to relate to it. Correct. Because I have also seen that thing that we would have one specific doctor, like a doctor uncle, and then everyone would just simply go to go to that one particular doctor for anything. And like you mentioned, if any other care is required, then they might say, okay, you need to go to this person or that person. But absolutely, that concept is something, which is very familiar in India as well. Correct, correct. And that is so now coming back to our original theme, right? So that is very unique to probably India, right? And that is where product managers have to figure out, how does that whole system work, right? In which city, which kind of cohort, right? Yeah. How will parents behave? How will kids behave? How will grandparents behave? Right? Who should be this doctor? How will you introduce now this person into their life? How will they call? Can they call 24 hours 7 and so on? So that is one part. Second is that how do we ensure this is a very reliable service? Yeah. Right, because if someone is coughing and having a fever, I want to reach out to this doctor. This service should be available. Yes. And should guide you in a very predictable manner. It should not happen that, hey, I heard you, but now every time he's saying go and meet the physical doctor, right? Then it will not scale. So I think this is a very nice complex problem. Complex problem. Yes.
And I think since we are talking about the customer-centric problems over
Yes.
here, the another thing is that whenever we look at a customer, right, especially from a B2C point of view, so there are so many things which are involved there, right? You need to understand what is the demographic of a customer. You need to understand what can be the mindset of the customer as well. What is the problem that you are trying to solve for them, and then what is the solution? Like you mentioned about various use cases right now. So how does the thinking of a product manager, right, or a product person evolves or is evolving with the time as well? Because let's say my consumer is also is also evolving with time, right? Earlier, maybe 10 years, 15 years back, we did not have that kind of internet penetration. We did not have, let's say, phones, that like every other person has a phone now. Even the kids also have it, right? So my customer is also evolving, and then I also need to see how my product can also evolve. So how does the product thinking evolves with that as well?
Absolutely. So I think uh, two important pieces, right? One is a very generic important piece which I learned through reflection.
Okay.
Right? What is the toughest part in product management?
Okay.
Right? Then I will come to the evolution
Sure.
part because that
Yes.
is linked. Right? So if you look at from the product management perspective, there are 3, 4 very important aspects, right? One is that, in general, the problem solving, the analytical capabilities, and so on. I think that is not very difficult over a period of time, right? To me, that is more of a commodity. Right. The second is, how will you execute, and execution happens in a different context. That also you learn and adopt over a period of time. Right. The third important piece is getting the right insights. Right. And this you master continuously over a period of time.
Okay.
Right. It cannot be learned. That I'm sitting here and I can figure out the insight that how these people are behaving, or how a particular things and why this is happening, right? This, I think, for any product manager, they should start from the beginning, because it will take time. It matures, right? That you observe certain things, you notice something, you then develop first the depth of noticing, then your insight. From that insight, you will create your viewpoints and so on. Now, coming back to your question, until unless you have this habit of insights, and then linking back to the process that you are in a continuous discovery of consumer base, and then getting those insights, you will not get the answer that how consumers are evolving. And now let me again come back to your first question, how it has happened in my life, right? Uh, so there was no internet, right? I mean, internet was just coming. Then we started, right? It was right. People used to really see mobile phone, and mobile was very text heavy, right?
Yes.
So pager was the thing, right, as a technology. So mobile pager was more of a reactive solve, that you will get a call, right? And that itself was a big innovation. That hey, 24/7 you can provide certain kind of support, because now in the pager you will get the notification. Right. Then BlackBerry era came.
Yes.
Right. At least there was an email. Right on top of it. Then iPhone era came, that there is a browser, you can do browsing, and so on. And then the social network, and then the e-commerce, and all those things came, right? With that, as you rightly said, two things happen. Number one, the generation also evolved, right? What we call the fakes Facebook generation. Then there is the Insta generation, and now if you talk to the folks, right? If I talk to my daughter and so on, they will say, "Hey, who talks over WhatsApp?" Right? Everything is Insta or something else, right? Snapchat, and so on, right? And maybe they are 24/7 on this channel, right? So you need to really continuously search both generations, because everyone is using technology at a very different scale, right? And different kind of technology, and for different kind of purpose, right? So as a product manager, you have to really, really segment and understand why people are using different kind of technology and how it is shaping their behavior.
Okay. Okay. And now,
And getting that insight is very, very important. Yes.
okay. And one more thing, in the beginning, you had mentioned about the customer, educating the customer.
Yes.
That's what you had mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah.
So how has that also changed, with time? Because again, my same thing, because the customer is also evolving, you have so much of information also available, right? If you just simply go on a Google or the internet, right? And earlier that thing was not there.
Correct.
So I think it would have been very different, and it would have been very difficult as well.
Yes.
Right, at
Yes.
that time. So
Yes.
how was it?
One part is answering your question. Second, I will share the example of
Okay.
insight, right?
Okay.
How it has happened. Uh, it used to be, manuals. I don't know, people don't even read manuals nowadays. And,
Yeah.
there are still physical products just because I think of compliance reason, they still print and give it, right? In the earlier days, those were the real, tools for both customer as well as the person who is going and teaching customers that, hey, this is how you will use this screen, this is what happens, this is how will you do it. And there used to be a multiple rounds of this training. There used to be something called super user,
Okay.
right, who will know everything, and you as a product manager spend a lot of time with him to explain him how this product works. Then there will be end user who will be just doing a particular task on it, and so on. So this is how it used to be, right? And then there was an era where a foolproof UX used to come, which is very simplified. So the first version of our mobile, right? It was exact replica of your earlier telephone, right? Same buttons, same. There is nothing new, right? Including the speaker phone button and so on, right? Then the browsing came, and that is where you would have noticed that not a lot of people adopted that, right? Only the super users went and started using it, and then people understood, hey, for the larger chunk of users, because you can't educate everyone, right? So the first Q&A format came, that you write your question, someone will answer, as if like someone is physically there to answer, right? And that is how consumers learned. The important insight, by the way, about this technology adoption, especially the consumer technology adoption, is that especially the emerging market, or where the technology was not there, and I will give my own example, or my generation's example, right? They skip the technology and adopt the latest one much faster. So in India, say for example, we hardly had telephones, but we immediately moved to mobile phone and then the internet. Right? And that can unlock massively, right? So the kind of digital transaction we do, right? We don't think so that happens in Europe or US, right? But we skipped a lot of things, right? So this leapfrogging can really transform the country very much. Right, and that is one insight, that this what happened in India, and with AI and AI-led product, if it is done in a right manner, India can again do the leapfrogging. Right, all of a sudden you can increase the capability of billions of folks.
And I think this is, it's a very true thing that you mentioned, because if you just look at UPI as well, right, it is so easy. I don't even need to carry my wallet around, right? I just have my phone. I can make the payment, anywhere and everywhere. Even if, let's say, it's a fruit seller on the side of a road as well, these people, they are also accepting the money via that channel.
Correct.
But whereas if you go to some in Europe as well, right, and in certain countries, the card transactions will be accepted, but in certain countries again, it's very heavily dependent on the physical currency over there, right? But I think in that way, India has grown a lot. It has evolved, quite quickly, I would say.
Correct. So if I remember, if I take my childhood or my generation's childhood, right, we hardly had any electronic toys, right? We were grown up with this typical plastic or little bit mechanical kind of toy, right? And imagine a kid of that generation and then working on AI all of a sudden, right? Versus the kid, right, who has always had access to this electronic toys, right, or small robot, or these kind of things. The kind of exposure he has, the kind of questions he must be asking inside, right? That how does it work? Why it is behaving like this? How can a toy make a noise, or can talk to me, play a music, right? That kind of curiosity with this AI kind of accessibility and technology can really do magic for Indians.
Yes. And I'm going to go back to supply chain
Sure.
because you have spent a lot of time in supply chain as an industry.
Yes.
This is one industry that I also really like. Now, over the years, supply chain has evolved a lot, right? And there are so many things that has happened. Whether you talk about the analytics, AI, AR, robotics, IoT.
Yeah.
How do you foresee this industry, supply chain, growing in the future as well?
So I think, as I said, that the physical internet needs to be created, right? And if I can take couple of inference from the internet, so what is it? Why internet scaled, right? One important piece of internet is that standard protocols, right? How the communication between two computers will happen, how will data move from A to B, right? There are standardized rules for that. I think that same principle will come to supply chain, right? So that it can scale, it can remain efficient, which means that there are standard boxes, standard way to transport those boxes, of different size, handling, right? There is a data embedded into each and every activity and the product.
Okay.
Right? Once this happens, right, a massive scale and efficiency can be churned out of this uh, operations or supply chain. Right? That is part number one. Now, to do that, what is required, right? One is that IoT at certain level has to play a very, very important role, so that every process, every machine, every product can become very intelligent. Right? A Coke can say that, hey, you're not able to find me, but I am in this corner, or I'm getting expired. Please do something for me.
Okay.
Run a sale for me, right? Why not the other way around? So today we are still thinking these products or processes in supply chain as dormant, and then we are bringing intelligence to it. Imagine that these billions of the product, or multi-billion trillions of the product, they become intelligent. That, hey, why don't you sell me instead of the traditional way that someone else is doing this stuff, or why don't you put me in this location? So step number one, IoT will play a very important role.
One more thing,
Yeah.
I think for the audience as well, what are the things that you include, or what are the things that come under IoT if you look at it?
In a very simple way, all the sensors,
Okay.
right, which can identify certain state of whether a product or a process. Example being, there can be a RFID, which can just track the location, the time, and the state of a product. Right? There can be a sensor which says that, hey, this is the temperature in which this product is. There can be a sensor which says that, hey, this machine used to operate at this level, but it is doing something beyond that.
Okay.
Right? So all this is complex sensors ecosystem is part of
The
the Internet of Things, right? IoT part. Then there is a huge data stream, right? Imagine that everyone is continuously tweeting now. Right, the way human tweets, there's like automatically they are tweeting. So first someone needs to capture those tweets, then give some form and shape, context to understand what it is saying.
Yes.
Right, so that is also part of a kind of a IoT ecosystem. Then there is an intelligence layer on top of that, that you are taking this feedback and instructing. So generally when we talk about IoT, this is what IoT is all about.
Okay.
Now these sensors can be just a very textual sensor, in the sense that they give a state. There can be a video based, that in this picture I saw that some movement happened in warehouse, and analytics on top of it. Right, so all that is in this space.
Okay. And one more thing. So you also took this example of address, right? In India, it's pretty difficult because that's how we generally define,
Yeah,
you know, behind this lane or iske piche, uske aage side mein, right? And outside, you know, you have those locations, those addresses defined on the map as well. I mean, if I put that address, the map will take me to that location.
correct.
Right? So if you currently, I mean, if you look at the current uh, you know, situation of the entire supply chain, India versus the global level, maybe you can take any specific country also. What are the biggest differences that you see? Maybe if you can just talk about a couple of them.
Sure. So I think let's take any developed country and our country. Before that, can I complete my IoT point? Sorry.
Please. Sorry.
Right. I think the key disruptions which are happening in supply chain, number one, is that convergence of technology, right? Which is essentially IoT, the AI-led intelligence or optimization-led intelligence, and some of this AR, VR kind of things, right? That is part number one. The second important thing which will happen, India will take some time, but I believe that again the concept of technology skipping will help India a lot here, which is robotics and automation.
Okay.
Right. So if we take very simple example, you know, we have been trying to develop manufacturing in India for 20, 30 years, right? And we still see one big gap, which is the skill gap. Right, we are not as skilled as say Chinese and so on, and it will take generations to learn those skills. But imagine that, you know, the robots and the automations which can aid to the manufacturing, they become really cheap and effective. Then India can skip that whole that I have to train, you know, millions of people for manufacturing. You are ready with that, right? So that is very very important piece for India to crack. Now, some of the innovations which we can do in that area, right? There used to be an era where, you know, we used to say German machines, right? Very precise, you know, mechanical and robotics engineering, right? But with the invention of AI, you can have a good enough mechanical machines, but a very good algorithm, and together they can do a lot more precise job.
Okay.
Right? That is what we try to do in robotics in, you know, whatever experiments we have done or scale we have done.
Okay.
And that is one important area where India can innovate. So like you have large language model, you can have similar kind of models for bots or robots, right? Which is, you know, you can sense the vision as well as the instruction, right? So the foundation model for vision, instruction, and action, right? Let me take a very simple example that you go to your friend's house and you say that, hey, I want to, you know, have an apple. And then she says, yeah, yeah, go figure out, right? In your mind, it is there, it will be on the dining table or in the refrigerator.
Yes.
Right? And then you see the apple, you wash it and you eat it. Now assume that you have a bot, right? And you have to figure out in the new location that find the apple, right? Then bot has to understand visually that, hey, first of all, that comprehension that it can be either on the kitchen, in kitchen there are multiple places, whether it is in dining table, refrigerator, or somewhere else, and this is how the apple will look like. Then I have to wash it, wipe it, then give it.
Yes.
Right? It's a very interesting area which someone can innovate, right? And so today the world is all behind, you know, large language model and so on. But once you link that to your robotics, the space is infinite, and India can really really benefit out of it. So that is another big area where, you know, the product managers and the engineering teams can work together, and it can really really leapfrog India.
Okay.
Right. So that was the previous question.
And yes, so comparison between India's current supply
Yes.
chain with a developed country, like you mentioned.
Yes. So I think there are three important big differences, right? One is that in the bigger country, the infrastructures are already in place, right? So that is number one. India, it is still evolving, right? Roads, warehouses, and so on. Right? There are advantages and disadvantages, by the way. India, the infrastructure is not there, but we have very small capacities, right? The disadvantage is that you can't do something at scale and efficiently. The advantage is that you have a lot of flexibilities. When you have things which are very small, then it is very, very flexible. Right? So that is, I think, point number one. Point number two is that, in Western world, everything is very well labeled. That's their culture.
Yeah.
Right? House number X, street number Y. It is not now, it is like historically.
Historically, yes.
Right? Ours is very expression world. Right? So you see that, Jyoti Nivas house, or we give name.
Yes.
Right? A very literally, literal names,
Yeah.
very expression led thing, right? Uh, whatever, Gandhi, MG Road, XYZ, something.
Yeah.
Right? So we are not, very structured and labeled. We are very expression driven infrastructure. Right? So that is the.
That's a new thing that I'm learning today.
Yeah, that is how it is, right? I live next to Ganesh temple or behind this,
Yes.
and so on, and we feel proud of that, right? That's why that thing became
Yeah.
important, right? Or right, my own address is like, near X Parshad's house.
Okay.
That X is like, 50-year-old X, by the way. He used to be there, right? But postman still remembers that, oh,
Yes.
the X Parshad house is that one.
Yeah.
Right? So that is how our landmarks are. Right? So the second is, this labeling problem,
Yes.
in the country. The third is, so we talked about infra. The third important piece is that, the process driven, right? Western world is very well defined process, documented process. They have been evolving and so on. We are very ad hoc in process, right? And we are ad hoc for right reasons. Certain cases we could not invest too much, right? So we take a lot of shortcuts and so on, and it works for us, right? So say for example, biker model, electric movement, right? This backpack thing, and so on, is emerging market phenomena compared to the Western world.
Western world.
Right? So these are some of the nuances, and we have to solve for our own country.
And one more thing you mentioned in between, that tech and product can work together, right? So, uh, being a leader yourself, and I'm sure you need to work with multiple stakeholders as well. Be it the just not just the tech team, but be it the maybe the marketing team or the accounting or various other teams, right? And you cannot have it your way all the time.
Yeah.
So how do you manage those difficult discussions? And how can a person, a product leader or a product manager, manage those discussions so that he or she can influence the decision as well?
Correct. So I think there will always be a conflict, and it is a good thing. Right now, let me divide this into two parts. So one is that definitely culture plays a very important role. Right, there can be a culture where you can disagree, commit, and move on. And there will be culture where it will be massively top-down driven, business driven, or product driven, depends on what company is. And then this problem becomes much more complicated. Depends on what side you are in. So, as a leader, the first important piece is to ensure that the culture is rightly set there, because of course one person cannot think all the possible scenarios. So marketing plays a very important role, that how will I take it to the market, is it right time, right price, right, can we increase the reach, how do we compete, and so on. Role, that how can we generate revenue out of it, is the business model right, and so on. Product plays a very important role in understanding the consumer insight and then linking partner, and so on. Now, coming back to your precise question, there are many things, but three important things, right? First is that you should have a backbone. Important piece, right? And this is independent of having the second important piece, which is having a insight and the point of view, right? so that you can argue, or you are in touch with consumer continuously so that you know about consumer problem.
Yes.
Right? Then only when you are talking, there is a credibility about that. Building relationships, right? Building a trust, a continuous communication, lobbying around that, right? End of the day, you have to be successful as an organization, right? So lobbying is part of that. So these three things are very, very important for you, whether you are a junior level product manager, which is called APM, to a senior level leader. These three things are not going away from your life. I mean, there are multiple other things, but these things, having a backbone, have your own point of view and insight, backed up by a lot of your own data sets, research and data. And third is basically building relationships and definitely doing lobbying. Okay. Right? It is very, very important.
So, Pranav, you have worked with multiple leaders, and in fact, with different people coming from different demographics as well, right? So, how are Gen Zs different from the rest?
Yes, interesting. I think first let's understand Gen Z, and then we'll come to different generations, right? Of course, every generation will have their own context, which shapes their thinking, their behavior, their aspirations, and so on. Right? In terms of Gen Z, I believe there are 3, 4 very important insights, at least, because I mentor them a lot in, whenever they are doing their startup. I hire them a lot, right? I work with them and go out with them and so on. So it's very important that you keep learning from new generation.
Yeah.
I think there are 3, 4 important pieces, right? One is that their context, right? In general, they are very optimistic about future and quite confident about that they can shape the world.
Okay.
So I think that is the first important piece. The second important piece is that they are shaped by a lot of information or digital information, right? Compared to say any previous generation, you are shaped by the stories told by your parents, grandparents, or your textbook or your novels which you have read, and so on. Right? This generation is shaped by the latest and the greatest and multimodal. Whether it is pictures on Instagram, whether it is reel, whether it is news, and so on. Right? Let me take one very interesting nuance. Right? When we were growing up, and the newspaper era, or even the TV news era, right? Maybe in a day, an hour or so, you will hear positive or negative news, right? Uh, and let's take one negative news, some murder somewhere, right? You will hear once in a day or maybe once in a 2 days, and some details around it, right? Today, that news is 24 by 7, uh, right, across these people, right? So the impact of 24 by 7 information consumption will create a very different kind of personality. So I think that is the second important piece. The third piece is generally the accessibility. Right now, to start something new, to learn something new has become much more easier. And since they have grown up in that generation, so learning from YouTube, right, has become much more easier, accessible for them, and they can really learn. So versus you learning from YouTube, you will take some time to figure it out because your learning style was very different, right? At least in my age, still I would prefer to read a book than to listen a audio version of it, and so on. Right? For these guys, that's a starting point. Right now, the manifestation of that is again 3, 4 fold. Number one, most of the Gen Z I have interacted, they are very much career oriented, right? So they will invest decent amount of time in learning something new, or what my friend is learning, let me try to learn that, right? From the progression perspective. The risk taking appetite is much higher. That, uh, I'm not interested in the salaries job. I will create my own unicorn, right? And I'm ready to take that risk. So I think that appetite and the confidence that I can create a world class company is very, very high. Third is that, I don't know whether we call it as opinion, or they are definitely part of one of the fans club, right? Either someone is following cricket, too much about RCB or any of the clubs, or Barcelona in football, or some stream.
Yeah.
So I think most of them you will find that they are associated, right, or online games or whatever it is, right? They are very much associated with that. And I think another trend which I am seeing that, uh, relatively, of course, that they need to a lot of breakouts, in the sense like, okay, now I'm tired, let me go for fun, right? Travel, entertainment, food, right? Let me try different kind of food and so on. Right? Maybe in our generation, availability was the issue, or we didn't needed so many breaks, because our mantra was that, work hard, otherwise something will break down.
Yes.
These guys, okay, I'm tired, I'm taking a break, I'm going for a trip, I'm doing something else, and so on. So this is what I believe is shaping Gen Z. But very interesting piece is that, of course, in every generation there will be a Pareto of people who are doing something, and so on. Uh, One sector or portion of the Gen Z is that, they are doing really good deep work, taking bold bets, right? Maybe to shape the world. So I have a lot of hopes for them. But I think, yes, I'm sure as in when they will mature, they will figure out, what is the right mix of, exposure to the information, synthesis of that information. They will realize that maybe that is more important than just the exposure, and from there they will.
Yeah. And I think this is something that we are also seeing a lot because, let's say a company which is hiring Gen Zs, right? Uh, there are some differences that they have also observed. Like you rightly mentioned, if they are tired, then they will definitely take a break.
Yes.
Whereas with the others, the previous generations, they'll be like, okay, no, this is something that I need to finish. Let me just complete it
Correct.
first. Maybe after
Yeah.
that, I'll take a break or something like that. But I think they are very, they are cognizant of their needs. What is it that they need at that time? And in a way, that is also something that helps because in these days, we talk about mental health a lot.
Yes.
Right. So I think this is also a good way. Okay, I'm feeling tired. Let me just take a break. Let me just rejuvenate and then come back to work.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So I think there are 2 3 factors. One is that, again, the context, right? Most of the time they are living alone, right? Consuming alone, right? So they need some breakout immediately, to go to the real world, maybe.
Yeah.
So that is definitely one important need for these guys. Second is, in general, I think most of them have not lived in a joint family environment. May not be true for 100% of the case. So, that piece is also there, that, the the urge to meet people, to get mentorship,
Yes.
right, to get some comfort. That is also, I think, very, very context driven. The third is, I'm sure Gen Z will argue against this, but I think the previous generations were not as much exposed to relationship building and changing relationship and having options. I think with Indian society, at least in metros, opening up more, this is another freedom, and this generation is going through,
Yes.
which is okay. But I think that is another reason for them to, get whatever emotional imbalance somewhere in between, and then again coming back to the track. So,
Coming back to the
yes.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Since we are talking about, the culture as well over here, you mentioned about it. What happens when an established Indian startup becomes a multi-billion-dollar company? What are the changes that happen in terms of culture, maybe technology, leadership, vision, if you can? throw some light on that.
Sure. So we start first with the leadership, because that is where I think culture, vision, right, everything is being driven. Right. So imagine a case where someone is managing a 100 people team or 50 people team, and then he's delivering outcome, multiple x outcome out of it, and that's the reason this company is ready for the next level, right? Now all of a sudden that leader has to manage a much bigger chart, or 10x complexity in terms of whatever vision or product or organization they have to deliver. So I think the most important piece is that how will that leadership transition happen, right? And then that leadership transition has three very important pieces. Number one is that understanding that skill while maintaining the agility. Okay. Otherwise, you will become a very slow moving big company. Right? And the third important piece is that fear of getting obsolete. Right? So in a startup, by design, they have that, hey, tomorrow we can shut down, or company X will take over, and so on. If you become big, if you don't have that fear, and that fierce mindset that there is a micro battle which I have to continuously fight, you will again become a very big company syndrome, which is not innovating. Okay. Right? So these are the three important behaviors which forces you to innovate at scale. So the first big challenge is about this leadership transition. Right? How do you bring in new leaders who can demonstrate this behavior? How do you groom the existing leaders who can continuously demonstrate this behavior? So those are very important pieces when you become bigger. So I think that is part number one. Part number two is basically about your processes. Right, when you are a startup, a lot of things might be very ad hoc and so on. When you become bigger, your responsibility towards your stakeholders, whether they are investors or whether they are consumers, become much higher. Let's take one very simple example about investors, right? Investors would like you to become much more structured, compliant, right? You can't have ad hoc, say, reporting or management of data, or say, protection of consumer data, about your security of the whole system or data, and so on. Right? From consumer perspective, at scale, your service should work the way it was working earlier, right? When you were small. And all that requires a lot of investment in processes, in building in a right manner. Right, and the implication of that is basically, one is the process, discovering and redefining the process and transitioning. Second is basically the technology choices, because whatever worked for you at a smaller scale may not work for you at a larger scale. And the third important piece is the technical talent choices. Right, the way you were doing, say, consumer research from the product perspective may not work now at scale. Right, you need to do it differently. Right, you need to have a team which is consistently doing the research. You need a very different kind of experimentation framework, A/B testing, and so on, to get a lot more data driven insights. So that is the second one. The third important piece is that how do you build now a more common kind of platforms or services which helps in faster innovation, right? So that you can minimize your the technology debt and still become much more agile. Right, so these are the three very important pieces which comes when you are planning to scale to a multi billion dollar organization. Okay. Uh, and still maintain that energy of a startup, because if you again become very meeting driven, slow decision making, then maybe at operational level you are agile, but then at org level you are no more agile. So that is another very big trade off which comes into the picture. I think one very important phase which comes in this company is adoption. What do I mean by that? Because there is a massive change all of a sudden happening, right? The system will revolt. Right? And what are the two, three very interesting aspects of revolt? If you have a new lateral leader who is coming, right? The old people may not easily accept. Yeah. Right? He doesn't even know what our culture is. Oh, he's doing something which is against our culture. Right? We will not give him time to imbibe into our culture, as well as the problem with that person will be that he has seen only scale and he has not seen, how to take them to the next level. Right? So there will be this very fierce conflict. Yeah. That, this is how X scaled company works, and these guys don't even know. They are like tribe. Right? And these guys will think that, hey, they will kill us. Yeah. Right? And there is a truth on both the pieces. So I think that is one conflict. Similarly, there is a conflict of, product development. Okay. Hey, this is the way we develop the product. Now, this process driven is too boring. Okay. Right? And then there will be attrition, there will be a conflict. Again, there is a conflict between the new process and the old one. And there might be a period of little bit of slowdown, and then all of a sudden you're a stakeholder, your leadership will say, hey, this is kind of scaling is not working out, let's go back to the old way. And thus, this to and fro will happen. So you have to come out of that. That will be a journey. You just mentioned about the product development, right? So whenever you are working on a new product development, what is the, or should, maybe I should ask you, whenever you are working on a new product development, how do you decide which approach should you take? What is your product philosophy? Three pieces again. The piece number one is that, you should be clear about what is the bigger strategy, which market we are going after, right? Is the market, what is the nature of that market, right? And market means the opportunity, the consumer set, the personas, and so on. And what kind of behavioral changes which we need to make, right? And that will decide the outcome, right? Now, given that outcome, what needs to be problem solved through which kind of product? So I think that is one important trait. The second important trait, not from product side but more from the team side, is that, is it a unknown area, or is it a problem solved but we are trying to enter into that space? Right? There are entrepreneurs you need to have in your team, and then you need to have a rock stars. So rock stars are the ones who are ensuring your current core product is really scaling well. Okay. Entrepreneurs are like, they will just explore the uncharted territories. Risk takers. Risk takers. Right? And you need a different kind of entrepreneurs who can do that. Hey, someone has already cracked and we have to enter into that space, versus something which is really unknown. So say, for example, health is really unknown. No one has solved for that, but some other area which is solved by someone else, but then we want to enter and win that space. So you need to have those kind of talent first, before you enter into building the product for that. The third is that once you have that talent and which area or strategy you are going to adopt, is the process. You need to enable them, because that standard process which is working well for you to develop your core product may not work here. That they should be able to iterate faster, they should be able to access certain resources on demand, they should be able to break certain things. Right? You need to handle the conflict between this core and this team, right? Because they will be doing something very different, right? Which core team may not like. The incentive structure, because they will fail more compared to core team. Core team will always deliver a result which company wants. Yeah. Right? So they should not be penalized for their failure. So these are the very important aspects which sets the base, that which market we are entering into it, understanding those strategies very well, understanding those consumer personas very well. Step number 2, having those right entrepreneurs kind of product who can crack that. Third is enabling system, which is process, technology, organization, which can work for them. And then enable the discovery, right? In most of the cases, we don't do the product discovery. We build something and we believe that something great should happen. But you iterate a lot before that product matures. The example I gave you, right? Someone invented the wheel, then the second wheel, then axle. Till the time automobile came, it was like 2000 years. Right? Of course, now we iterate much faster, but that iteration is required. That's a natural cycle.
And the second point that you mentioned, that having the right entrepreneurs as well, or maybe the right talent, let's call it right talent. I think one good example that we can look at here is Dunzo versus Zepto, because Dunzo was already there in the market,
Correct,
right?
correct.
They had the first mover advantage, but when Zepto came in, Dunzo was already existing. But now, if you look at it, they are doing much better.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Absolutely. That is one very important aspect.
And yes, what's your product philosophy?
No, no. So I think, as I said, that the most important piece of the product is to deliver the outcome. And let me first give some examples, because in India, there is a lot of conflict in the product management and the organization. Right? So there are really pure technology driven or tech first companies, right? Facebook, Google, or whatever, Magnificent Seven we call, right? Nvidia and so on. Right? Of course, their business model is very different. Right? Then you have very deep tech companies, Open AIs and Nvidias and so on. Right? Then there are, like, so to say, tech enabled, tech first companies, right? Amazon, Flipkart, Zeptos, and so on, which they are in a retail business, but they are enabling that through the technology. In India, we don't have a version of Google's, Facebook, and the deep tech at this point in time. It is emerging, but we don't have.
Yes.
Right? So we sometimes try to adopt those cultures into, say, retail or any other business tech enabled companies. What you have to understand, that what does tech first mean for your own company before. So that is the philosophy number one, right? Are you enabling the ecosystem, right, through technology? Of course, you are enabling the consumer experience through technology. Are you, from the business perspective, bringing down the transaction cost very close to negligible? Are you bringing down marginal cost of scale very low? Right? What are you doing, right, through technology? And those principles needs to be very well written by the product leaders, right? This is the role my product is going to play, right? Or are you enabling, say, product-led distribution, right, in your, if you are in a B2B space especially. So that is
exactly is a product-led distribution.
So let's take very simple example. Traditionally, any SaaS business, there will be a salesperson. He will go to different enterprises and they will give a demo and they will say, hey, they will meet different layers of stakeholders. The domain, say, sales department, then the decision maker will be CFO or the procurement guy. That is how the long lead time happens. The product led could be that, hey, this is the tool, try freemium, then pay some subscription. There will be a demo on the website, right? Everything. So it's like, product which is enabling the sale of that product itself.
Okay.
Right.
So we don't need to do the sale first.
Correct.
But we need to let the users use the product
Correct.
first and then let the sale
Correct.
happen.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So, and then there is a hybrid model of that and so on. So that is what I meant by product led growth. So I think the role of technology and how you will differentiate and create a competitive advantage is very, very important. That is, I think, the step number one in my philosophy. That are you clear about what role you are going to play? The step number two is setting up the customer first organization, which is first within the product, that which persona, which consumer segment you are targeting, who they are, and generating those insights. and at the same time setting that across the organization. Because if marketing is not consumer first, if the sales department is not consumer first, business is not consumer first, you can't scale this consumer first pieces, right? Because then you will become a subordinate to those organizations, and those organizations will work for a little bit of short term, because that is their incentive structure, right? How much sale you have done in a quarter, in a month, in a week. They don't think 2 years down the line what will happen, and that is the role of product, that you define the future, not the current. Right? So ensuring that they are also consumer driven. So I think that is the second important aspect for me. The third important aspect, as I said, is the context. Are you a startup or are you at certain scale? Because then the product development philosophy changes. Right? So that is the third piece. Fourth piece is basically setting up the infrastructure for experiment. How iterative you are to experiment your product. So I think these are there are many other things, but these are very important pieces. Because if you don't start delivering the business outcome, at least in the context of what I mentioned, that where we are technology driven business rather than the pure tech players, it is very important that you start contributing to your business.
And one more thing, because the entire journey of, let's say, how product has also evolved, the product management field, I would say. Do you think that the ecosystem has also become more supportive for that? Now that an ecosystem can be, let's say, the advancements which are happening, maybe in terms of tech, right? Different kind of problem statements to look at, or maybe it can be something coming from a government perspective as well. How government is trying to uh, support the product philosophy.
Absolutely. I think the ecosystem has evolved, and either it is from the technology perspective, right? Building product has become much more easier. Some of the basic stuff which we used to struggle, like, stitching a consumer journey, measuring it, and so on, right? It was pretty expensive and complex to build it earlier. Now there are a lot of out of the box tools which are available, right? Basic kind of segmentation of consumer based on that recommendation of certain content or product. Those things are available out of the box, and thus any startup can buy those tools, iterate much faster, right, compared to what it used to be earlier. The second piece, regarding the ecosystem, right? Whether it is, say, your supplier ecosystem or your any other logistics ecosystem, that ecosystem is also technology enabled, right? So 10 years ago, we used to teach them, what does this app mean, what does this delivery app mean, right? How can you use it when you are driving? Why do you need to send your signals back to us? Right now it is given. Right, that gig economy has evolved over a period of time, the whole ecosystem has evolved, and so on. Third piece about the government, right, and I will give one example, and very important for product managers, right? In last 5 years, what we are seeing, that at scale government is expecting you to follow a lot of rules and compliances. Right, from product management perspective it might look little boring, but it is very very important. And imagine that you are in a fintech world, then I think half of your job is to comply,
Yes.
right? And it is very important for product managers to understand those compliances and ensure that you deliver still a great experience following those rules. Right, so it is very very important to understand that. The second aspect of that, you have to be, if you want to be ahead in the game, you have to work very closely with government, right? Because now government as a ecosystem partner is also evolving. They are also understanding technology, right? That how technology can shape the role. And I think we should give full credit to Indian government, the digital infrastructure they have created, right? It has not only enabled the startup ecosystem, the Indian ecosystem to evolve much faster, but it has also enabled their own understanding of how technology can leverage and change the country. So one of the examples I will give, that I worked very actively with government, right, to build this whole. There is a program called Gati Shakti.
Okay.
There's a program called Unified Logistics Interface, right? Very similar to what ULIP is. We are trying to create a, as I said, Internet of logistics, or Internet of physical world, right? Where from any mode you are transporting, right? Whether it is a biker or a truck or a ship or airplane, whether it is a domestic or international, right? You can map everything using one single protocol.
Okay.
Right, and we worked very closely with Government of India, multiple departments, whether it is the Ministry of Commerce, Logistics, the PMOs, and we build this whole architecture, which is open for the startup or any other companies to use, and governed by the way your UPI is being managed.
UPI is being managed. Okay.
Correct, or Aadhaar is being managed. So in a similar manner. Now that will give a very different kind of exposure to you. Number one, you will understand the perspective from government, right? Number two, you will really test yourself in terms of influencing. Number three, you will also realize the impact you are creating, because there, one line policy has an impact on whole country, right? And it's a massive impact, right? Number four is that you will have access to all kind of infrastructure, influencer, people, companies, and so on, right? And you can really impact each and every Indian, right, through those policies. So this will be another big area, right, for India to innovate, and Gen Zs also to come and participate.
You mentioned about ULIP. What's that?
So ULIP is a unified logistics interface. That's a full form of it. If you want to do any logistics activity, whether it is a warehousing, so imagine that in let's divide at a very high level logistics component. So you have different type of commodity, whether it is a, say, grains, staple, or fresh, or say machinery, to whatever, fashion, or something, right? So you have different kind of products, you have warehousing, and you have multimodal logistics.
Yes.
Now you want to move goods from location A to B, country A to B, which means you have, say, warehouses, port, right? You have EXIMs, which means like all international logistics policies. You have banking system, all of that in one umbrella.
Okay.
Right, using one standard protocol. And if you want to do any kind of logistics, it is enabled by government.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that will be a massive infrastructure change. So imagine the two-step jump for India, and that is what I was talking about, leapfrogging for countries like India. So Western world, they were very efficient in logistics because they created the physical infrastructure. So if you look at, in general, Western world, their logistics cost will be around 8 to 9% of GDP. India's logistic cost today is around 13 to 14% of GDP, is much higher. While we are not even exporting that much as China is exporting, right? Yeah. Imagine the world 5 years down the line or 6 years down the line when we are exporting massively, right? This cost will go up, and we can't be competitive if this cost is like that. Now we need to solve two problems for that. One is that we have to be equally efficient in terms of physical infrastructure, roads, ports, railways, and so on, which country is trying to do. But imagine on top of that, we have built a very efficient technology infrastructure, right? Then no one can beat us, and that is the technology skipping. That the way we are building the physical infrastructure is very tightly linked to our technological infrastructure.
As well.
Right, so it's a physical and technology, they are coming together, and that brings the scale and efficiency at a very different scale. So that was the idea of building this ULIP, or it is now part of Gati Shakti as a program.
Wow. And one more thing, because you come from a product background and then you venture into the CTPO role. So if you can, just help me understand or help us understand what's the difference that you are seeing getting into a CTPO kind of role. Yeah.
So I think two pieces. Number one, that I've been always very close to the technology, and, not only in terms of product design, but in terms of leveraging the new technology, understanding is how it works. Right. So for me, this transition was, I mean, at always I had conflict with my chief architects and so on, because we used to go at detail level, and that was one of the reason, because the grooming happened that way, as I told you in my earlier part of the career. Right. It was chief engineers who used to be the product manager. Right. The second piece is that end of the day, if you have to deliver the final outcome, you need to make a lot of trade-offs, whether it is the kind of technology which you will use for your particular use case or for your product. Right. That is one very important piece of this particular role, which is the chief product and technology role. And this knowledge of technology really helped me. The second piece which is helping me a lot is, personally, I am also leveraging technology skipping. Okay. What do I mean by that? Is that because of this AI, because of this new security issues, right? And I will give a couple of examples. Right, everyone is learning. The pure CTOs are also learning. The CPOs are also learning, and thus I'm also learning and jumping up. So let's take one example. If you want to leverage Gen AI for your use case, right? There are three very important problems. Problem number one is that what is the right use case where this can really work, right? The second problem statement is that do you really have that data which can really make your Gen AI solution very, very efficient, effective for your use case or consumer, right? And how will you train it and ensure that you evaluate in a manner that 99.9% it is correct. Right? And there is a huge data, uh, we call it something called embedding issues and evaluation issues and so on, right? Which is new for a lot of folks. The third is the security issues. What do I mean by that? Let's take a very simple example. So in Gen AI, you generally write a, say, prompt, right? Prompt is nothing but a simple instruction to AI that, hey, if this kind of users are this, behave XYZ. If these are the user, do something else, or whatever, right? This kind of prompts you have written for a banking system. And someone comes and says that, hey, in this rule, if Pranav, please do something like this, right? There's a massive security loophole, right? How will you ensure that these prompts are behaving in a proper manner, apart from other security rules? And these are very, very new kind of problems which are coming up with the AI. Or you train your whole model in a particular manner which is very, very biased to a very specific use case. Right? So I think that is where the role of both technology and product, they are converging. Right? And the role of CTPO is evolving.
Okay. And the last question for today.
Sure.
For someone who wants to enter the product management field, what is that one piece of advice that you would want to share with them?
I think one, if I have to say, uh, is develop this capability to get the insight, because that is a really, really long and complex process. Okay. Right? Rest all, I think you will learn, you will find a mentorship, but this one, no one can teach you in a manner that you will learn and do that. That observation, right? Making sense out of it, getting your insight, validating that, validating in the sense that whether the insight is wrong, whether it works for your product, it doesn't work for your product. That's, that comes with the multiple cycles of learning. Okay. So I think observation is very, very important piece. Okay. Something which we ignore, that you have to be curious, right? You have to be creative, right? uh, you know very deeply noticing why a flower behaves in a particular manner or this flower behaves in a particular manner. over a period of time, the way we are groomed, we generally lose that mindset. Right? We become very textual, right? Learning from books, right? Answering questions. So we become more of a question answer person rather than from very emergent behavior, observing something and forming a view of our own, right? And challenging others' view. Right? We have taken so many things granted. We do not in this process upgrade ourselves. So very simple example, and I'm giving a little bit of engineering example, right? Everyone knows about Einstein's theory or quantum mechanics because in grade 12 we learned it, right? But we probably learned maybe 0.001% of that, and that gave us a very big boost because we became engineer, we did a lot of things. But those guys observed so many things, right? And then came up to this conclusion. We have never revisited after that.
Yeah.
That hey, I learned something mechanically, but what was that key insight these guys got, right? Which led to these kind of inventions or discoveries. So it is very important that you develop that skill set.
Great. Thank you so much, Pranav. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Yes.
And I think it was a wonderful discussion. I also learned a lot of things, which were pretty new for me as well. And I hope our viewers also do the same. They also feel the same.
Thank you very much. Pleasure talking to you. And if anyone would like to connect to me, as I said that I love mentoring, especially startups. So I'm open for that.
Definitely. Yes. It was such an inspiring conversation with Pranav. We have learned the essence of creativity and strategic foresight in crafting technology solutions that touch lives. Share it with someone who may find it useful. This is your host, Ruby, signing off. Until next time, keep exploring the past, discussing the present, and preparing for the future.